One of our founders said that if we consistently focus on making sure that the problems we solve are way more expensive than the solutions we provide, then financial success is almost impossible to avoid.
From the team at Sales Loop, it's How to Sell More. I'm your host, Mark Drager, and each week we bring you a masterclass in tackling the biggest challenge and addressing the biggest opportunity every single company faces, and that is generating more revenue. So whether you're a business owner or a marketing professional, we're here to help you succeed in sales, even if it doesn't come naturally to you. Now today we're talking about the discovery process, how R&D, how customer support, how it fuels sustainable growth. And helping us to explore this topic is Dan Shute, President and CEO of Volant Products, a world expert in casing system installation technology for the oil and gas industry. Now, a few quick highlights about Dan, his team, and Volant Products before we get into the conversation. Now, Dan is one of the co-founders of Volant, which he started over 25 years ago in their basements. And through collaborative leadership, through innovation, Dan and his partners and his team, they've grown the company to over $50 million in revenue. They have 150 plus employees, and they serve customers in over 50 countries. Now, under Dan's guidance, Volant has developed and released and taken to market groundbreaking products, which really showcases their ability to identify and solve complex industry problems through innovative R&D, which is something we're going to explore today. And we're also going to explore how Volant's unique approach to building a strong company culture, including their hiring practices and being able to find team members who stay humble and hungry and smart, how these strategies have contributed to their growth over the last 25 years. In this episode, you'll learn about identifying market opportunities and the power of continuous improvement, and really how to build a company culture that fosters this innovation and frankly, customer loyalty. Dan's stories are a masterclass in growing businesses through recessions and through boom cycles, while being able to maintain a commitment to their employees and their customers. So with all that said, I am so excited to share with you the conversation that I had with Dan Shute, President and CEO of Volant Products. Dan, I want to thank you for joining us. You represent the type of entrepreneur that frankly, we rarely get to hear from. You and your partners have grown the business from nothing to $50+ million privately held company in the oil and gas industry and engineering. And you've done this over the course of 25+ years. And so I'm excited to pick your brain today and learn what it really takes to build a business like Volant Products. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And thank you for the invitation, Mark.
And so for our listeners who may not be in your industry, can you explain what Volant Products does? What industry are you in? What do you do? Who are the clients that you service?
Yeah, absolutely. We serve the oil and gas industry. And for people who are outside the industry, one of the key things that happens is the drilling contractors drill a hole through the earth down into a hydrocarbon-bearing formation. And then the first thing they do is they put a pipe in the wellbore, and then you pump cement down the inside of the pipe, comes back up the annular space between the wellbore and the pipe, and it hardens up. And that casing, as we call it, has become a permanent part of the well. We get involved in enabling others to install the casing more efficiently and more effectively than they are able to do in other ways. We are the world's experts in casing system installation technology, and we embed our technology in hardware, software, and services to help other people successfully get the casing all the way to the bottom of challenging wellbores.
And so when I was learning about your company and when we were speaking a little bit before, gosh, I don't remember, and I apologize, maybe this is from Armageddon, but I feel like at some point I've seen a movie where someone explained the fact that if you took a straw into a milkshake, turned it upside down and slowly pushed it in, and you know those straws, listener, if you can imagine those straws where you're able to kind of adjust things. Yeah. I mean, today, oil and gas wells are dug hundreds and thousands of feet down. They're dug like these snakes or these straws that have to go around all kinds of things. And your customer isn't the oil and gas company. Your customer isn't even the well operator. If I'm not mistaken, your customer is the contractor who's brought in as a specialist simply to help dig the wells or get these straws deeper into the earth. Is that correct?
That's really close. So there are companies who are drilling contractors. They're the ones who operate the rigs that you see in the field when you're driving through a well field. We do serve them as well, but our main customer is actually the service company who sends people and equipment out to install the casing into the wellbore. We do sell directly to the oil and gas companies from time to time, but the majority of our customers would be in the service provider category.
Okay, I see. So you found your niche in serving these specialized service providers, which is really interesting. Now, I'm curious about how Volant got its start. How did you identify these specific market needs and begin developing solutions for them?
So we actually had a vision for discovering expensive problems that we thought we had the ability to solve. And we started out actually doing engineering consulting. And it's a fantastic environment to be exposed to challenging problems. And as we discovered what we thought were viable solutions, we would go back to our customers and told them what we thought we could do for them. And they said, that sounds like a good idea. We'll give you a try. And so at that point, as an entrepreneur, you do what you need to do to deliver on your ideas. And it's a very high energy spot to be. You're willing to work ridiculous hours for very little money, enough to feed and clothe and house your families is a good threshold. And you invest everything back into the business for the purpose of actually executing on the dream that you've got.
And so having established the company, growing the company, moving from an engineering consulting firm where you're basically for hire to developing your own products. And then over the last, how long has it been? 20 plus years. Is that correct?
It is. It's 25 years. And we started actually working out of our basements. And when we were finally able to afford an office and actually come in and have a coffee together in the morning, that was a milestone. When we came up with our first product idea, we actually bought a lathe. We hired a machinist, and we had one product, one customer, one employee, and we started making stuff. And it sounds higher risk than it was, because if it hadn't worked out, we'd have sold the lathe and found something else for the employee to do, or hopefully not let them go, because we do try to make enduring commitments to the people we bring on. So if you do a good job for your customers and they realize value in what you're doing, they give you a chance to do it more. And so we went from one lathe to 2 lathes and a mill, and we had an opportunity to make more interesting things. And we continued to do the engineering consulting in parallel with this. And it served as a fantastic, very fertile field for ideas to germinate and take shape. And then our customers gave us the opportunity to continue to do what we're doing. And when you do it well and you've got a new idea, they're more likely to say yes to your new idea. I think that's maybe the genesis story.
That's remarkable. It's remarkable that you were able to establish the firm, that you were able to grow the firm, and that your company is the size that it is today. And I think the reason I'm saying that is because so few people are able to grow a company over the course of decades and are able to, I suppose, put one foot in front of the next, because either they want to go much faster, they want to get much bigger, they want to crash and burn, they're over leveraged, they exit, they grow through acquisition. What would you say, if you had to boil down your secrets of success, what would be the 1 or 2 areas that has allowed you to be competitive and you would attribute a lot of the success that you've had to?
Sure. So I think our success would be driven more by how few mistakes we've made rather than how many times we've been brilliant. And if you can consistently avoid big problems, you're less likely to find yourself crashing and burning. We've never had debt, for instance. And people will tell us that we could have grown faster if we had leveraged other people's money. And it's actually cheaper than equity. And so our observation is, yeah, but that may be cheaper, but which one is friendlier in a downturn? And the oil and gas industry is notoriously cyclic. There are ups and downs, and our revenue goes up and down dramatically. And not having debt that requires a monthly payment frees us up tremendously to invest in the business during slow times and to be positioned for success when things pick up, which they inevitably do. I don't want to discount the value of good ideas. Good ideas are a key part of what differentiates us from our competitors. But good ideas by themselves are necessary but not sufficient for enduring success. I would argue as well that being more concerned about satisfying your customers and enabling them to succeed, being more interested in that than you are in generating maximum profits for yourself is another cultural piece that we have consistently observed. And that one of our founders, when we talked about why we do what we do and how we do what we do, said that if we consistently focus on doing the right things for the right reasons, looking after customers, treating them the way we'd like to be treated, making sure that the problems we solve are way more expensive than the solutions we provide, then financial success is almost impossible to avoid.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I love how you emphasized the importance of focusing on customer success and doing the right things for the right reasons. Now, it's clear that this approach has really been crucial for your long-term success, but I'm curious, how did you actually go about identifying those quote unquote like right things to focus on? In other words, how did Volant go about recognizing and selecting the problems that are actually worth solving?
Part of it is recognizing an expensive problem that you have the ability to solve. I'm not sure you can plan for that. You can expose yourself to an environment that is problem rich, which is what a consulting business is. But then when you recognize something that you think is an expensive problem and that you think you've got the capacity to solve, finding a way to discover whether or not you're right. We've probably had more misses than hits, but the magic is not betting the whole farm on the miss. And so a key flagship product line for us is something called a top drive casing running tool. And this attaches to the top drive of a drilling rig. And this is the part that goes up and down and screws pipe together. And you can also pump drilling fluid through it. And in this particular case, we saw customers trying to use the top drive to make up, or that means to screw together threaded connections for casing. And the way they were doing it was actually wrecking the casing. And so we got a consulting job to figure out why this was happening so they could make it stop. And so we figured it out. And in the truck on the way back from the job, you've got a lot of time to think. And the thinking goes along the lines of, gee, there's got to be a better way to do that. Instead of screwing something into every connection and then putting a bunch of load through it, which makes it easy to damage the threads, and the threads are delicate, wouldn't it be great if there was a tool that just attached to the rig, grabbed the pipe without touching the threads, and allowed you to apply torque and hoisting load and pump fluid through the center of the tool? Wouldn't that be great? And so we came back and talked about it. And we said, yeah, we think that would be great. And we think we can do it. And so we built a prototype. We showed it to people. They said, yeah, let's give that a try. And we discovered all the things that were wrong with that prototype. And in fact, we have changed architecture twice. So the tools that took us probably a solid decade to get to market are a third generation. The first tool that most people have seen that came from Volant is a third generation of our technology. So there's a willingness to know when to discard the technology that is not hitting the mark. And there is a need to listen to your customers, and we call it the ecosystem because it's more than just people. It's a workplace, in our case, a drilling rig. It might be hot, it might be cold. There might be angry people on location who yell at the people who bring the tools out to the rig. There might be people who know you and trust you and will let you make a mistake that costs them money because they know that it's going to be worth it in the long run. So it's these factors, I believe, that fit together to let you actually figure out whether your idea is workable, whether it's something your customer truly needs, or whether you just think they should need it. And even if they do need it, but they're not willing to pay enough to enable you to make it. If you go too far down the road without understanding your customer's problems, you're probably going to be disappointed with their level of excitement.
This is, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you'll want me to release this, because what you just shared, the biggest challenge I feel that sales, marketing, and business development in any company faces, and this has to do with even product development, is just not being close enough to the real problem and the real customer and the real use case. You just don't understand it. But you have, and in my agency in Sales Loop, we have the same thing. We have a consulting side of the business where we come in to solve really complex problems and really complex challenges for our clients, which I love. They bring them to us. I find them challenging. I find it interesting. And many consultancies do that. But then we have a production side of the business as well, which I hear you describing, which is, hey, so not only can we be really close because we're coming in and we're working as a consultant and we're helping to solve complex problems, but for the right problems, for the right challenges that we believe we can develop solutions for, we can move that over to R&D, we can move that over to production, we can productize that, and then we can use future consulting or future relationships with clients to test it in market. And even though this is extremely slow and extremely expensive, in my experience, it develops a far better product and market fit because you, as you mentioned, over 3 generations, over 10 years, you've been able to slowly chip away at this solution, as opposed to what do most people do? They try to license something, acquire something, come up with something. They go, hey, there's a huge market. And then they build it all. And then they spend a ton of money taking it to market. Then they find out they have zero market fit and it just doesn't work. And it's a very expensive way to go about it.
It really is. And there's a process, and I think it's almost what a stage gate process is intended to do, where you take a step and you check to see if it was a good step. Should we go on? And I think particularly in the very early stage for us, that process is happening continually on a daily basis in the heads of the people who are discovering the design. And I use that language on purpose because I do believe that you discover problems. I mean, sometimes you create problems, but that's a different interview. But you discover things that actually should be different. And to be able to have a well-conditioned understanding of how things should be, and to be able to discover a mechanical design or discover a software strategy to actually solve that problem, and then discover how to make the thing. That's actually an interesting piece for us. And we do hold many patents, but we realize that the difficulty of manufacturing what we do is actually better the difficulty of manufacturing what we do is almost better protection than patents in many cases, because if you can't make it, you can't copy it. And then you discover how to put it in the hands of people and you see how they use the tools. And then you continue that feedback loop. I don't think we ever stop, actually, because we're still listening to our customers. And right now, we actually have one of our guys in Dubai talking with one of the national oil companies about a new design that we think could solve a significant problem they're experiencing.
Hey there, it's Mark. We will get back to my talk with Dan, but first, I just wanted to take a quick moment and share with you how I can help grow your business. So at Sales Loop, I'm sure you know my award-winning B2B branding and marketing agency. We partner with leaders like you, people who are ready to take their businesses to the next level. My team and I will help you build out a bold, strategic brand that's going to share your company's stories. It's going to set your people and your thinking and your approach apart from your competition, and ultimately that's going to be able to drive sales. So as a listener of this podcast, I know you know how focused I am on sales, on strategies, on growth. And frankly, we may just be able to bring that same thinking to your company. So if you have any questions about our strategies, about our approaches, about how we use branding as a strategic tool to grow sales, or really, frankly, any questions about anything at all, I'd love to connect with you. You can find me over on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out anytime. And if you'd like to learn more about the work I do day to day, with my agency, you can find out more details over at salesloopbrand.com. So with that, let's get back to my conversation with Dan Shute.
Have you ever gone to a customer with an idea and had them rebuke the fact that you're doing all of this work for free? I mean, I've always preferred co-inventing new products, new services, new SOPs with my clients. I will set up a meeting. I will ask them, as you've just mentioned, and I will say, this is what we're intending to do. This is how it's intending to work for you. I would love your help with this. And I've never had a client push back on my side saying, no, Mark, please don't make this thing even better for us somehow. It's not something that ever happens, is it?
No, I don't think so. I've heard people say, gee, it costs too much. But what is too much? Are we talking about, if I buy this, I'm going to go out of business? Then for goodness sake, you shouldn't buy it. Tell me you can't afford it. But the majority of our customers buy something from us and then find that they can make a lot more money than it costs them to buy the equipment. And so they come back and buy more rather than telling us it's too expensive. But to your point, to answer more directly, I can't think of a customer who said, your equipment is good enough and I want you to stop improving it. It's actually probably part of what goes into technology excellence is continuous improvement and a willingness to obsolete your own stuff. It's harder to displace you if you're constantly improving what you're doing.
And so I know another one of your keys to success at Volant Products is customer service.
Yes.
And your focus on customers, your focus on going above and beyond. I think you had shared with me a story kind of just demonstrating how above and beyond you're willing to go. Can you share that with me?
There's probably many stories. And the one I'm remembering is a case where we had a customer in the northern US who had an opportunity to win some new work, but they needed some parts for their tool to enable it to do a different size of casing. And so we gathered the parts, shipped them down to the customer, and the customer tried to assemble the tool, but it didn't fit right. And so they called us and said, hey, things are not fitting right. What's going on? And so we had a conversation with them and realized that one of the parts had been manufactured incorrectly. And so we said, that is our fault. We're going to make this right. And we shipped the part.
Downtime is a really big deal, though, in your industry, right?
Well, and these guys they're not on the rig yet. If a rig has to wait, that's a really big deal. The time pressure this time is because the job is going to be up on Monday and it's Friday afternoon right now. And so you've got a few days to get this right, but it's the weekend. And it does need to be right when you show up on Monday, because if the rig had to wait, that would be a big deal. But the spot we found ourselves in was we had made a mistake and we had delivered it to a customer, and there was no way to solve this except to put the right part in a truck and get one of our guys to drive from Edmonton down to where the customer was, which is probably a 6 or 8 hour drive. It fits in a weekend. And so we hand delivered the parts to the customer with an apology for getting it wrong. And they were able to complete their job successfully. And that would have been one of our early lessons in how important it is to own your mistakes and to do what is within your power to make it right for a customer. And the way you respond to a problem is actually more powerful in relationship building than never making any mistakes could be.
So the reason why we brought this story up is because in my experience, owner-managed companies, and especially when you're small, it's very easy to be able to compete against any other player because you are willing to give more time, more effort, more focus. You can literally walk through your shop and say, Bill, please get in the truck, go to this address and drop it off.
Yes.
You are in 50 countries. You have 150 plus staff. And so I'm curious, as an owner-led company, you have the passion and you're there, but how do you handle culture? How do you handle leadership? How do you handle your hiring practices and employee empowerment to ensure that this kind of dedication and this customer service is happening at all levels?
I love the idea of empowering people and having decentralized autonomy, and people know what the guidelines are, they know what the boundaries are, and they can do what's required to satisfy the customer within those boundaries. And almost every part of the company has an element of that. I used to believe that company culture was either one of centralized control or decentralized autonomy, freedom to do what you need to do. What I've discovered is that there is a need for both. And in mission critical business activities, typically in the corporate services space, HR, legal, IT, finance, you need to have strong centralized controls so that you don't make mistakes. Because one mistake in any of those areas could actually sink the company. So you need strong controls. The more you're touching customers, either in a service or in a sales capacity, the more decentralized autonomy within limits is absolutely critical. And if people know what matters most to the business and they know what the beliefs and values of the business are, and they've got the DNA to be able to process that information in real time, you've got a fantastic recipe for empowerment. Once in a while, you stumble on a phrase that captures what you're about, and it becomes powerful. You start to hear people sing it back to you, and you hear them sing it to each other. And at Volant, one of those phrases is that we do the right things for the right reasons. This means that it's not just about doing the right thing. It's about examining the motivation and the rationale below the decision. And it's easy enough to get your head around, and it resonates with our staff. You talked about leadership and leadership's role in driving culture I don't know that culture is something that you can prescribe. It's not something you can post on the wall. Culture lives in experience and in stories. And as such, leaders need to understand what the culture is. They need to understand what the beliefs and values are. They need to care more about getting it right than being right. And when you do those things, you've got the opportunity to live out your beliefs and values. And it has to start from my office. It has to be super strong in senior leadership. And I think people see what you do more than hearing what you say. And when they see leaders living out the values that they hear us talking about, it lends credibility to the whole situation. And people who want to be part of something bigger than themselves and be in a spot where they really like working and they can master their trade or get better at what they do, it creates an environment where that can happen. I do a fair bit of reading as well. And Patrick Lencioni is one of my favorite business writers.
Five Dysfunctions is that
Five Dysfunctions of the Team is kind of the first one that's on a lot of people's radar. And he writes another one called The Ideal Team Player. You asked about our hiring practices, and a significant part of our hiring practice is looking for the ideal team player. And Patrick actually apologizes in the intro to the book for asking you to buy a book to hear what he has to say, because this is, to me, is so self-evident. But when you think about the best team players you've ever played with, they are humble, they're hungry, and they're smart. And I don't necessarily mean smart as in a really high IQ. Of course, you've got to be smart enough to do your job. The kind of smart he's talking about is smart about how they interact with people. And so humble doesn't mean you use yourself as a doormat or allow yourself to be a doormat, but it does mean you have a right view of yourself and you don't think you're the most important person in the company. Hungry means you're driven, and it's pretty hard to have a great team where you have somebody who's just there for a good time. They want to win. And then people who are smart about how they work with others are just pure gold on a team. And so we actually do spend energy. We have a series of questions that are designed to draw out the humble, hungry, smart attributes of people we're considering hiring.
Now, if you're listening to the conversation that I'm having with Dan and you're thinking, Mark, this is how to sell more, and you guys have not talked about marketing or branding or advertising or tactics or sales or going to trade shows or brochures or any of that stuff, we haven't talked about any of it. There's a method to my madness here. And that's because, in the work that I do as a brand strategist with Sales Loop, a big part of what we're always looking at is what is the differentiator? What is the thing we're going to hang our hat on? What is the thing that the actual underlying ethos or that thread that we can pull on, that secret sauce that we can, because yes, products are products, and features and benefits and pricing and market fit and problems we solve. And all of this stuff is the standard stuff we could be talking about. But the reason I wanted to have this conversation today is because it's clear to me from the few conversations we've had, Dan, that in your industry, you've focused on customer service and understanding the customer problem. You focused on engineering the very best solutions and providing the very best customer service possible, which also comes from hiring practices and culture. And so all of the other stuff we could talk about, what trade shows do you go to, and how is your sales team structured and all of that stuff. It's all great, but correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't sound like that would be the thing that we would be hanging our hat on. It's really about understanding the problems, creating really great solutions to complex problems, continuous R&D, continuous engineering, continuous development, continuous investment in the tech, and continuous investment in the right people. And when you bring that together, it has allowed marketing's job or sales job or business development's job to be just a little bit easier, because the thing that you're known for is your level of service, your quality of products, and what have you. Is that correct? Is that a correct assessment?
I think that's spot on. Absolutely.
And so if you're listening and thinking, well, I came to hear the tactics because I want to grow fast, what would you say to the listener, Dan?
I described a little bit about the startup phase and the entrepreneurial phase where you were so excited, you're working ridiculous hours. For us, anyhow, there was a phase where we could not keep up with demand. And it was really just a matter of how can we grow in a way that stays organized? How can we make sure our quality systems and our business systems can keep up with the growth? And this is back to not making mistakes, because great way to disappoint customers is to make mistakes. I just finished telling a story about mistakes and what a positive experience that was. But if that happened every time they bought something from us, that would be a really great reason to go shop somewhere else. And we try not to give people reasons to shop somewhere else. So make sure your systems are robust enough for the scale of the business. And interestingly, it's way easier to build systems before you need them than after it's too late, because it's a little bit like trying to build a bridge as you're crossing a river or build an airplane as you're trying to take off. Those things are very challenging. And getting out, if you can hire people who've been there before, you can talk to people who have been there before you and learn from them, master the best of what other people have already figured out. These are really healthy habits to build that will enable a more stable growth. And if we aren't going to talk about sales tactics, I think having customers trust you is absolutely invaluable. And for our salespeople to listen really well, understand the customer's situation. And for us, it's less about listening so that you have time to think about the next thing you're going to say and how am I going to get this guy to want what I have. It's more a case of listening to understand and asking questions that actually help you get inside the customer's shoes and live their experience with them. And if what you discover is that there's not a really great fit with what we have, we're pretty honest about that. And in some cases, we'll actually recommend a different product and say, from what I hear, you probably need this more. And you don't make the sale, but you do build trust in the relationship. And when they do gain an understanding of what we offer, we're going to be one of the first people they call, because they don't feel as if they're being tricked into spending money. They feel as if they're being invited into a relationship where it's not a win unless we both win.
So there you have it. That was my talk with Dan. I am so excited to have been able to bring him on. And I want to thank Dan and his entire team at Volant Products for being so easy to work with and being so open to sharing all of these details. If you want to learn more about Dan and the work that they do over at Volant Products, or get in touch with him, go to volantproducts.ca. And you can also find Dan over on LinkedIn. Now, while you're over on LinkedIn, feel free to look me up. My name is Mark Drager. My details are in the episode show notes. I would love to connect with you over there. Now, one last thing, if you've made it this far into the show, if you can hear my voice, if you are still listening to me, you really should subscribe. And here's why. Each and every week, we share actionable strategies and tips, just like what Dan shared with us today, like real world business tips, case studies, and strategies to be able to grow your business and to boost sales. And if that's what you're after, you are in the right place. So again, you really should subscribe. So with that, I want to thank you so much for listening. I want to thank Dan and his entire team for taking part in this episode. I am Mark Drager, and I will catch you in the next one.